now we're at the point where we actually get to really dress the bottle and bring it to life. So we're going to go over and snag it off the set. Going to gently carry it over here and put it on my station. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix the glycerin. I'm starting with a very fresh batch of glycerin. It can last a very long time. I tend to dump it if it's been in the bottle for a few weeks and just start fresh. I don't want it to get milky or moldy at all. So with this particular spritz bottle that I have, I know that this is a 50-50 mix, straight up 50-50. So now I'm going to use a small beaker and I'm going to mix that up. Simple as that. I don't need a ton of this. I'm going to do probably about 10 milliliters of each. All right, the glycerin is really thick, so I make sure I let it all run out. This stuff is really gooey. Give it a good shake. And I'm going to let that sit for a minute. Just kind of let it mix up. So, let's get out a couple of my favorite brushes. So now again, I get really low. I want to be as low as I can so I can kind of be right at bottle level, camera level when I go ahead and do this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start with my crushed ice, the tiniest, which is from the ice powder. All right, now remember, gravity does work against you. If I were to take the stuff and start to go down, brush it down the bottle, it's going to actually roll off and roll down. So I start from the bottom and I go up with all of the slush and the ice chips that I put on there. This just takes a little bit of time. So we're going to go ahead and start to apply this. Now, it will slide, it will roll off, that's just the nature of it. But since I have that tooth on there from the spray, it's got something to hold on to. Now, I really do believe in doing this myself. There have been many jobs that I've done where I actually have a drink stylist on set, and that's mainly done for speed. When we have so many images we have to produce, it's nice to have a drink stylist who can be doing this for you. However, I really think it's an important part of the process in terms of setting the tone of my style. Well, what do my bottles look like? I don't want to completely leave that in the hands of a stylist. I actually want to set that tone. So if I have done this over and over and over again to kind of set my style, if I'm working with a drink stylist, I can convey to them exactly what I'm looking for so they can help match my style. Again, this is a place where you can differentiate yourself from another photographer. Now, there are certain places on the bottle where the ice just catches really nicely. Okay, this ice powder and crystal ice is really interesting stuff. It absorbs 500 times its own weight in water to get a lot bigger. I've made this stuff pretty big, so I'm just going to take a little of it, sprinkle it on the side, and let it soak up some of the water that's in the other bit of ice crystals, or ice powder. I'm going to do that because I want to start to vary my size a little bit. Some of these are looking pretty big. So I'm going to let that soak up for a bit while I grab some of this other stuff. Now, as you can tell, what I'm doing is I'm kind of painting around the logo. I'm going to bring some of this stuff inside the logo, but I'm going to be very, very selective about it. So my first thing to do is really build up on the edges. The other thing about this, you get some random hits of just pure water on the actual bottle itself that are really randomized coming off of the brush, which is going to help with the glycerin. So when you kind of come back a little bit, you'll see where you've got vacant spots where you want to fill it in. But at the same time, you don't want this to be completely even. It's got to feel spontaneous. You can see how it just slides down. So I'm kind of pushing it around to get it to find a little bit of tooth, a place for it to hold. And what I'll do is I'll intentionally bring stuff onto type or onto the logo and then push it kind of out. I'm definitely paying attention to where I'm placing this and how I'm interfering or interrupting the actual type. The other thing that does happen a lot is you think you've got something pretty good looking, something pretty sweet, and you put it on set and you'll see where things are showing up that you just don't want. So I definitely do a lot of adjusting on set, but I try not to, because again, set gets nice and tight, right? When you've got to get down in there and actually do the dressing on set, you really run the risk of bumping things and knocking things over. You want to be very, very careful as you do that. All right, so I'm going to try to introduce a few larger ones strategically. These have a tendency to really roll off, so I've got to be very careful. See? Fall right off. The other thing I don't want to do, sometimes when I put these on, they'll stick and they'll really be kind of the short side will stick and the long side will be sticking out. I don't want something that feels really pimply. I actually try to push them in a little bit. I try to flatten them. I want that refreshment. I want it to feel like it's icy, like you pulled it out of a cooler, but I don't want it pimply. I don't want these things hanging off all over the place. I have said this many, many times, and I find it to be very true. We are creating spontaneity. It is forced spontaneity. We want it to feel like it's natural, even though every one of these things was deliberately placed. One thing you will also find is that while it might feel laborious for you to be doing this with your portfolio, just wait till you get clients out there. It's amazing how we can analyze every one of these ice chips. And again, I'm going to tell you to invest in good brushes. They make a huge difference. All right. I think that looks pretty good. So now let's make a mess of it. I'm going to pull these out of the way. I don't want to get any spray on them. So, a couple things. Here's where it actually gets really tricky. Once you put on the spritz, you're pretty much stuck. We can use a Q-tip and start to pull some of it off, but if you do too much, you got to start over. That happens a lot. I still do it. I will think I'm in a good spot and I wind up putting up on too much and then I've got to start over. So I try to build it up. I try to also kind of move around the bottle, again trying to create that spontaneity. It does create a big mess. That's the way it goes. The other thing that you'll want to notice, I don't know if our cameras can pick this up, there is a huge difference in the way you squeeze the bottle. If I do it forcefully, I get really fine atomization. If I do it in a very slow manner, you'll see how it just trickles out, almost in a stream. That's how I actually control the variety of sizes in the spritz that I want. I use a mix between kind of a more burst, where I get that fine mist going across, and that deliberate slow push of the atomizer to get larger droplets that almost kind of stream out. All right, so let's go ahead and give this a whirl. Now I'm gonna move the bottle so I try not to block your camera view too much. But normally I kind of move around this. I start with the spritz in the opposite way that I do the ice crystals and the ice powder. When I'm starting with the chips of ice, I start below and work up. When I'm starting with the spritz, I'm going from the top and I'm kind of letting it fall down. And I tend to want bigger droplets on the sides and on the bottom. So then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a few strategic drops that are a little bit larger. I'm going to do this with the glycerin mix. I'm going to pull out the sprayer and I'm actually just going to touch the base of it. I'm going to try to add a couple of drops that are strategic. Tomas, do you know where I put the Q-tips?
Yep.
Would you mind grabbing them for me just in case I need them? So hopefully you can see how that is affecting it. I'm getting enough of the glycerin right on the end that when I touch it, it sucks into the bottle and it stays. The other thing you probably have noticed me do a lot is I brace my hand with my other arm. I think it's really important. Thank you so much. I think it's important because you are getting in tight. You just want to make sure you're touching the right spot, and it helps you just to have a little bit of steadiness. I don't care how steady you are naturally, we all shake just a little bit when you get in close like that. And if you're like me and you've had a bunch of coffee, you're definitely going to be shaky. So this is another way to add nice droplets where I want. Now I see I've got a couple of spots where it's run off. Clearly I've had a runner down there which has kind of taken away all the spritz I had. So I'm just going to hit it lightly. Now the other thing that you can do is you can put a drop of pure glycerin on there, and purely for demonstration purposes I'm going to do that in a couple of spots. So remember, this is a mix 50-50 of water and glycerin. I'm just going to touch a little bit of pure glycerin on here. I can see I have too much. I'm just going to pull a little off. I'm going to add that in. You can see how thick and different that is. And I can actually drag that a little bit and give it a little bit of a line. That's going to hold, so I'm going to have a little bit of a runner. But for the most part, it's going to be very solid. Okay, I want to spread that up. So I'm going to drag it. Now, if I've got too much on there, which I do, I can pull a little off. I've found a Q-tip works better when you pull it, make it thinner. You can see that one, I'm about to lose it, it's running. So I'm gonna push it around while removing some of it at the same time. All right. Now we still have other options available. If I really want a really thick droplet, I can use either the aqua gel or I can use the drop effect, either one. But I think I'm pretty happy with where this is going right now. And I think we should put it on set and start to take a look at it. Again, we're going to wind up making adjustments out there, but let's see what we look like.